Thanks very much for having me here today. And I'm from New Brunswick, Canada, not New Brunswick, New Jersey, just in case someone thought, sorry. So we're the top north, the true north. It's my pleasure to talk to you today about very specifically around trial accessibility and some of the options or the considerations that we as a community of ALS can consider specifically with regards to trying to improve our ability for patients to participate in trials. I think it's really important to understand and to recognize that research is not linear. It doesn't start with discovery and end at recovery, and rather the patient is the essential part of that cycle and both informs the discovery as well as is an absolute requirement in order for us to make discoveries. And the ability for patients to participate in research, I think you've heard it well from both Angela and from Caroline, it is really incumbent upon us to make those changes that allow access to trials for patients. Now, you've heard throughout this conference that there are many barriers, many obstacles to being able to access trial participation. Angela talked about the wait times that we experience in Canada. Our median wait time right now in Canada is 18 months. And for those of you who are familiar with inclusion criteria for many clinical trials, you are already out of contention as you're getting your diagnosis. In addition, there's delays to getting your diagnosis. There are wait times for imaging. There are wait times between being seen by a generalist to getting referred to someone with that specialized knowledge. Additionally, even once you are diagnosed, where you live may have an implication for what you may be able to participate in. It's not just alone the geography or the distance, but it's the fact of sometimes things in our environment, the climate, the weather, the socioeconomic impacts of your reality, those health equity issues that we are all quite familiar with. Do you live alone? Do you have the supports you need in order to help get you to and from various trial participation? Do you have access to the internet? Do you have the ability to leave a job or in order to take time out to participate in those trials? And so just over the next few minutes, I just want to put out a few ideas and a few strategies that can make a difference in improving. This is by no means meant to be comprehensive. I think the comprehensiveness comes from talking within groups like ourselves and with all our participants online. But these are just some ideas of some positive things that are happening now to make trial participation more of a reality. So here's what a typical clinical drug trial, one-year trial might look like. 17 visits or 17 interactions with your research team. However, if all 17 of those had to be done at the research clinic, which would be usually in a major urban center, that would be a significant amount of travel and effort and burden by the individual. However, changing the protocols to allow for some of those visits, in fact, in this particular trial, more than half of the visits are being able to be done at the person's home, both by clinical team members traveling to the patient's home for things like lab collection or doing remote monitoring and self-monitoring of some of the visits for different outcome measures. Keeping the protocols flexible. If a person is not necessarily able to travel to the center for a particular in-person visit, well, that doesn't become a protocol failure or a major deviation, that your protocol incorporates the ability to actually switch sets and have those measures done from home, or perhaps a measure may not be done that time at all. We've talked a little bit already about the value of registries and the value that registry participation, and participation in a registry is in fact participating in research. A standard randomized controlled trial gathers data usually from a fairly homogeneous group, and we're talking tens or hundreds of patients. A registry can gather and prospectively follow information from thousands of patients. And as we get better at, as Angela described, keeping all of us on the same page in terms of the outcomes that we're collecting and the ways that we're collecting that, using things like self-reporting tools, those thousands of patients collectively will provide us with very important information. And it is a way for that individual to participate in research and be connected about research. In Canada, we have a neurologic diseases registry that's been going now for 10 years, and it includes the participation of 14 of our ALS clinics across the country. And these are clinical research centers as well. We now have data from over 2,000 participants with ALS, and so we've been able to use this registry now to prospectively interrogate outcomes as it relates to perhaps new drug therapies that have become available. So in addition to open label extension studies, we also now have what we call real world evidence ability to be able to follow those outcomes and trajectories on patients participating in this. So as I mentioned, that's just a little bit about the trial designs, and Angela also mentioned the adaptive trial designs and the open label extensions. One other strategy I want to talk about that I think is a positive thing is going remote. Now, this is not a new idea. We always think about remote and remote participation as something that happened because of COVID and our reliance on being able to connect with people virtually. However, these are really old ideas, and in our clinic, I'm from a fairly small center, the motivation to use remote options for patient participation really was based on our need. We're a small center in a fairly geographically diverse area. By using remote strategies, this enabled us actually to provide better care. And what it's led to then is our ability to have better access for our patient to participation in trials as well as registry. It has all those other benefits as well, such as addressing the climate-related issues. It helps keep patients at home and in their community, surrounded by the people that are important to them, who also then can get to feel a little bit more part of what is happening. Overall, it also reduces those stressors and the burdens on individuals that the frequent travel may require. And so remote is not just Zoom. Remote can include the trial team going to the individual personally, physically being there on site in order to collect measures, collect labs, and do some of those outcomes. It also includes those actual remote things, which can be Zoom, but there's also now been the development of various technologies such as self-administered vital capacity evaluation. So being able to do pulmonary function tests on yourself from home and then uploading those results. Being able to do self-reported ALS-FRS measures. Being able to have by remote connection by video the trial check-ins and evaluations, and this has made a significant difference. We need to be better at validating and using consistent outcome measures, as Angela well described, using, for instance, we talked about self-use of the ALS-FRS, but also using validated measures that can be done remotely for patients will help improve some of that trial participation. It doesn't go without saying that trial access and participation absolutely requires the meaningful participation of patients, the persons with lived experience, and their perspectives. It cannot be a top-down token participation of patients in trial design. It needs to be a meaningful engagement that is done in an intentional and systematic way to ensure that the perspectives of those who are living with ALS, as well as their families and caregivers, perspectives are taken into consideration right from the get-go with regards to trial design. We did a survey facilitated through our national registry on persons living with ALS and their perspectives around research, and identified, interestingly, and this is pre-COVID, not a lot of love for doing telephone survey types of research, but number one, being able to take an experimental drug by mouth was something that there was the highest interest in. Also, we gained information about just how far people are able to go. And we thought, well, great, 60% are going to go over 100 kilometers in order to access a trial. But that means 40% are not, that they can't go that far. And those are things that we need to take into consideration. Patient-reported outcome measures are those that measure what is meaningful and important to persons with the lived experience, and we need to be able to come up with validated, sensitive, specific measures that we can incorporate into trial design so that a measurement of a thing like an FVC is not the only thing that we're looking at. And so finally, I just want to end on the importance of building that research capacity. Some of those presentations this morning mentioned, the hot spots of how close you are to a research center. I'm in a very small center. Collectively, our province is less than 1 million people. I describe our province, which takes 5 or 6 hours of driving to get from one end to the next on a good summer day, as we're the size of a Toronto suburb. That's it. But we need to be able to provide opportunity for our patients to participate in trials. I agree with Angela. Every single person should be offered the opportunity. And so it's by having a network of our clinical centers across countries or regions to help support each other and collaborate and advocate together with industry to bring the trials home and to bring them to each and every site. Not every site is going to be able to recruit 20 patients. A site may only recruit 2 patients, but that is still 2 patients who should be given that opportunity. And so by having this type of networked and collaborative work through all of our ALS clinics for both research and clinical care, it's allowed some of our smaller centers like ourselves to benefit from the mentorship of places like the Montreal Neuro, so that sites like ours can actually participate in research trials and investigation. In fact, our center, it was at Angela's nudging, Colleen, have you heard about this particular trial? I said, Angela, it's a phase 1. We've never done a phase 1 in this province. You can do this. And so we did, and we've done our first phase 1 trial in ALS, and we had the very first patient enrolled in the country in that trial. And so these are things that I think are really important to consider, and I hope we continue this conversation as we move forward to the open question and answer. I really think it's incumbent on all of us as a community, policymakers, clinicians, researchers, industry, and most importantly, persons with lived experience and those important community organizations that support them, to work for positive change so that every single person who would like to participate in a trial is offered it in a timely and accessible manner. Thank you.